is maybe a time to mention the Islamo-Left, as some people speak of it as, and maybe divided loyalties that we're seeing in the Labour Party and the Green Party.
So this is a really fascinating moment in history, isn't it? Because we are now seeing the culmination of mass immigration, specifically in this context, Islamic immigration, and then second and third generation Islamic community in Britain, versus the left wing, and you include with that some of the things like the quite aggressive pro-trans agenda, etc. And you are now seeing those things coming together. Now, for a very long time, in my view, the left courted the quotes unquote Muslim vote. And I think that's a reasonable thing to suggest.
Sure.
The problem is, where does that lead? Because that would only really work if that quotes unquote Muslim vote had then assimilated to a degree where they naturally joined in with other left-wing ideologies, such as being, loosely speaking, very, very pro-LGBT, etc., which I don't think has happened. Right? I don't think has happened in Britain to a large extent. And this is a major problem in politics, and this is one of the issues that Keir Starmer has got. And we're seeing the breakaway group now, the Gaza gang, those 5 MPs, who I'm sure would not appreciate me calling them that. One of whom has just recently gone into bat for cousin marriage.
Yes,
actually, Iqbal Mohammed, which was a remarkable intervention in the House of Commons, I thought. He happens to be the MP for Batley and Dewsbury, which is the same area where we saw the Batley Grammar School incident.
Right.
So we are now seeing this, what was an unholy alliance, I think, and almost like a vote herding operation, crumbling before our eyes. And we actually saw that in the most direct sense with something that I don't think Keir Starmer got enough stick for, and I think actually could have been a resigning matter. When there was one of the many votes on a potential Gaza ceasefire, and this was relatively early on, there was a huge protest outside Westminster. I was at that protest. There was a huge protest outside Westminster, and the SNP had brought a motion in the House of Commons to have a vote on it, which would have put the Labour Party in an incredibly difficult position, because about half of Keir Starmer's front bench, I suspect, would have voted for a ceasefire. Yeah. And his position at the time was not to have a ceasefire. He'd have lost half of his shadow front bench. He'd have lost goodness knows however many MPs behind him, and there was an inclination that there was probably an election coming up at some point soon. So what did he do? Well, the allegation is that he or Sue Gray or someone else essentially went into Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House of Commons office, and leant on him and used language not dissimilar to the idea of, look, can you live yourself if we have this divided vote here, because the MPs are getting threatened, people are getting threatened here. We've had people turning up at people's offices and homes. And of course they had, but that was a situation that the Labour Party had to deal with at the time. And Lindsay Hoyle, inexplicably and without precedent, as far as I can gather, ditched the vote, canned the vote. And that saved Starmer from having to be confronted by the reality of his own politics, which is a left-wing socialist, I would argue to the extreme, intermingled with a load of very pro-Gaza individuals. A large portion of that, I believe, are also, like you might describe them as the Islamo-Left. That would have been the moment, the culmination of, can this party and can that ideology actually coexist? And it couldn't in that situation. And they managed to can the vote. And he's kicked that can down the road. But something else will happen. Something else will happen at some point, and we're going to see it. But now, because of a lot of aspects of the British Muslim community, as is their right, have politicised themselves. Absolutely. And we're now seeing the rise of the independent. And under our current system, there are pockets, there are seats that are incredibly winnable for an independent. I think there are huge question marks to be raised over potential intimidatory tactics. And if people, when they go door knocking to canvass for votes, if I was doing it for any particular party, I'd have to try to sell my manifesto. I would raise questions over whether or not some candidates who stand from the Muslim community on an independent ticket knock on the door and basically say, if you don't vote for me, then Allah won't be happy. And that's a difficult thing. When you're in a close-knit community, you potentially all attend same or similar mosques. That's an unbelievable amount of pressure. And if I'm being honest, if I was that way-minded, I don't know what I'd do in that situation. I don't begrudge people feeling pressured and vote for someone. That's not a comment on them. It's more a comment on whether or not there is an increased level of religion in politics and what pressure that leads to and what that looks like. Let's play the tape forward in 20 years' time. Yeah.
We know from, I mean, Israel's a really good example where they have 20% or so of the population being Hasidic Jews, and they massively influence politics in Israel. It's ridiculous, to the point that they often push Israel towards more war or policies that might, end up in war. But the Hasidics themselves don't have to fight in the wars. It's actually a disgrace. Really? I think that's a disgrace. Yeah, because they're religious, so they don't have to. Most of Israel is secular. So the 80%, including 20% of those are Muslims actually in that country, then have to go to war to fight the wars that are voted for by the Hasidic community. So we've seen that in Israel. It is just a fact that sectarian voting happens, and particularly in religions, a rabbi over there will be able to say, hey guys, you should be voting this way. It doesn't even have to be that much pressure. It doesn't even have to be Allah won't be happy in the Muslim community. It just, this is who you should vote for. If you're a good Muslim, if you're a good Hasidic, if you're good this, you vote this way. That's a worry. And I wonder if the only way we can actually for now temporarily fight back against that is to push for compulsory voting, something that as an individual libertarian kind of person, I really don't like the idea of that at all. But the fact is most British people don't get out of bed to vote. They can't be bothered. If it was compulsory, but you'd still give them the option to abstain, so you can still go, no, I don't want to vote, but I've got to tick a box, then I think we wouldn't see what we're seeing now.
That was an interesting point. I think they do that in Australia.
Yes.
Yeah. And I don't know how happy or otherwise the Australians are with that. For me, I think as long as you've got the option to abstain, then there's not really that much of an issue there. I mean, conceivably, you could draw a massive middle finger on your ballot paper and it wouldn't make that much of a difference. So you're not going to get fined for it or whatever. So yeah, I'll be up for that.